Hello, we are going to get started in just a second. Here we go. Hi. Okay,
Hey.
perfect. Work 2 times in a row. That's always a good sign. So you guys that are just tuning in, I'm Tanya from Helping Hearts Homeschool. Most of y'all have known me for a while. One piece of housekeeping before we get started. We have a really awesome interview for y'all tonight. And then the Homeschool Summit that we've been talking about for weeks is also finally live tonight. So if you want the free ticket to that, make sure that you head up into my stories and you can register for your free ticket up there. And then the freebie that Miss Alicia has for you will also be up in my stories once this interview is over. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have Alicia kind of introduce herself. And is it Alicia or Alicia?
Alicia,
okay.
But I answered to
my name's easy, so most people don't get it wrong, but every once in a while someone will call me Tonya and I'm like, I know who you're talking to, it's fine. So, I totally get that. Well, we're going to have Miss Alicia introduce herself and give us just a little bit of a backstory on how she started homeschooling and kind of got into the writing side of it and really fell in love with writing. And then we've got a few questions that you guys have submitted, so we're going to ask those as we just kind of go along here tonight. And if you have a question that you either didn't get submitted or you think of another one as she's talking, go ahead and drop those down in the comments and I will make sure that I'm monitoring those as well. So Alicia, if you want to go ahead and take it away and just kind of give us a little bit of a backstory.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I am Alicia Brown, and I'm the owner of Write with Mrs. Brown. I am a former homeschooler. I keep saying I homeschool for over 10 years, but really, if you count the, before school age years, it was well over 13, 14, 15 years for sure. My oldest is 18 now. And I started homeschooling, actually, similar story. I never intended to homeschool. So my whole plan was to, get my kids to school age and then go back to work because I had majored in, or my degree is in human resource management. But what happened, I used to love doing the sales over the weekend, like going to people's yard sales. So my kids were really young, and I was in this moment where I was trying to figure out what I wanted their educational experience to look like. And literally, like, it wasn't even funny after a while. Like, I ran into people at their yard sales, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really love this family and the kids. And I'm like, I would get in a conversation and they would be homeschooled. And I'm like, okay. So, the first like 2 or 3 times, like, hey, I met this really cool homeschool family this weekend. But like by the 13th weekend, when I kept running into these families that I love, I was like, maybe I should look into homeschooling. And so that's basically how I started looking into homeschooling. And once I really wrote down, like, okay, forget the method. What is it that I want my kids to walk away with when they leave my house academically and otherwise? Everything pointed to homeschooling. So that's how we started homeschooling and how we fell into homeschooling.
That's so cool. Well, that also is an awesome testimony of homeschool families and the fact that they left a good impression on you and not a bad impression. Because how many times do we see the flip side talked about as well?
Right. I was like, yeah, it was nothing, what you expect or what the general narrative about homeschoolers.
So did you have a passion or like a degree or something in writing before you started homeschooling, or did that kind of come about when you were working with your own kids?
It actually came about when I was working with my own kids. Writing was the thing that I was always really good at writing. So it was something that came really easy for me. But one thing that when I was in that process of figuring out what do I want my kids' experience to be academically overall, one thing I remember growing up was it depended on which teacher I had that impacted my grade. And I never really had a clear understanding of what was different other than a different teacher. So one thing I definitely wanted was something that my kids could have a clear understanding of what the expectations were so that it was never like, oh, you're getting a mom grade because of, how you feel about me, mom. And so when I joined Classical Conversations, so that's who we typically homeschooled with. We joined the Classical Conversations community, and they use the Institute for Excellence in Writing. And so when I found that curriculum, I was like in love, because it is so structured, it is so clear, and it worked for all four of my kids. So I decided that I wanted to not only become certified in it. For Classical Conversations, I was actually a essentials tutor. So I was a tutor trainer for our area in Classical Conversations, and just really, really loved IEW. And so that's kind of how I found IEW in writing.
What IEW was, because I saw that you were certified in it. So it's an actual curriculum, and you are a teacher for them or a tutor for them?
Yeah, so IEW stands for the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and they have two skills that they teach across all of their lessons. They teach students the skill of structure, and that means that's how students organize their thoughts before they write. And they do that for both nonfiction and fiction writing. And then they teach the students the skill of style. How then do I take that frame of what I want to say and paint a picture with my words for my reader? And so I really love the incremental way and the mastery way that IEW introduced those skills. And most of all, I love that there was a path forward across my child's entire academic career. So I didn't have to figure out what I'm going to do, when they get older or when they become middle schoolers. I was able to use it all the way through, from elementary, middle, and high school. And I absolutely love how they present the curriculum for writing.
And is
for
that
students.
An online curriculum, or is that something that people would order and it's mailed to their house?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. So they have curriculum, meaning they have what's called theme-based writing. So they have like U.S. history-based writing, ancient history-based writing, medieval history-based writing. That's a lot of what we use when I was in Classical Conversations. And they always start with sources. So their strategy is not to start with a blank page, because that usually, makes our kids, run away and write. So they always start with sources, source texts that are model text, and they teach the students how to keyword outline and summarize and things of that nature before they move them to a blank page. So parents have the ability to pick a themed-based writing, or they have video-based writing as well, where Andrew Pudewa, who's like the founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing, he teaches video-based lessons. So if you're someone that you're just really nervous about teaching your kids how to write and you need that extra support, or like for me, I had 4, and so just trying to divide myself in 4 to teach my kids how to write, I love the video-based support, because at least I could be folding clothes while we're watching the video. I'm learning, they're learning, and so we all had the support that we needed. And then IEW does offer directly through their website online support, and then I offer online classes that walk students and support parents through the use of the IEW, the Institute for Excellence in Writing curriculum.
So the classes that you have on your website are not IEW curriculum, that's you kind of coaching people through how to use the IEW?
Yeah, so it's for your students. So the classes are for the students. So as the students are working through each of the lessons, I call my classes teams, as opposed to like just classes. We're a writing team. And so they generally are in full year classes, and what they'll do, they'll join a writing team along with other students who are working through that same curriculum. And we come together to not only review what we learned in the video lesson, we also get a chance to share our work with our team members. And with that, we get to celebrate each other, to say, hey, it's a little bit, can make some of us nervous to share our writing. And so we celebrate each other when anyone shares. We also preview like what we're going to be learning this upcoming week. We look at author spotlight. So while our students are learning how to get better, we study published authors who are already good at it. And we unpack like, okay, if we're learning how to add who, which clauses, or strong verbs, or quality adjectives. Let's see how Rick Riordan has added this to his book. And so we do that. And then we do Fix It Grammar, which is the IEW's grammar curriculum, where the students do both grammar and alongside their writing.
It would take place of like in a language arts class. So IEW, you can do that as like you can do both simultaneously.
Yeah, you can do the writing, you can do the grammar. To add the language arts component, though, IEW has, like, I'll give you an example. For example, this is modern history-based writing. I do this with one of my tutoring students. They have literature suggestions inside of all of their curriculum. So if you're like, I don't have time to do a book list and figure out writing and grammar, you can actually make sure that is a full ELA program.
Very cool. I have an 8-year-old that is not bad at writing by any stretch. She's really good at it when she sits down and does it. The problem is getting her to do more than write, you know, the bare minimum of like the 5 or 6 words per sentence. So that might be something I would look into. And I saw on the website that it starts in 3rd grade, or does it start earlier than that?
It can start earlier. Now, my general classes, I start with 3rd graders, but I has things that are all the way, you can start in kindergarten if you want to. They have really like age appropriate introductions to that skill of structure and style that would be appropriate for a younger student. I work with a couple of younger students on a private tutoring basis, and they have something called People and Places in Our Community that gives them a nice gentle ease into that, so it doesn't become this huge undertaking. And then as they get older, they have both theme-based writing or video-based writing called Structure and Style, where it continues to help them to develop their skills in writing in both nonfiction and fiction.
So if anyone listening has a question about IEW or anything relating to that, they could reach out to you and ask you directly, correct?
Absolutely. They can email me, they can DM me, whatever works best for them.
And I saw on your blog, you actually have a ton of resources yourself on just teaching different writing, not techniques, but different ways to motivate young writers. So definitely I would recommend going over to her blog, and that is writewithmrsbrown.com. I don't know why I always want to put the E on there. I want to say writing, and I know that's not correct. So writewithmrsbrown.com, and there's a ton of resources specifically around writing on there. Now, do you have an affiliate link or something they can sign up for IEW, or would that be a whole separate website?
That'd be a whole separate website. So I do have an affiliate link, which is it's IEW.com/Mrs. Brown. So if they go to that affiliate link, the nice thing is if they do go to that affiliate link, they get a list of all of my favorite IEW resources, and there are several free options for them to pursue or to look at. So for example, if you have your 8-year-old and you're like, I want to see what this whole structure and style thing is all about, IEW gives you 3 free weeks to look at to see if this would be a good fit for you and your family. So if someone is specifically looking for IEW, they can go to that link and look at some of the free resources, or they can also sign up with my newsletter, and I have links to all of the free resources outside of just some IEW items as well.
Very
that
cool.
They can
I'm excited to check some of those out as well. Like I said, writing is definitely a strong point for her, but not a strong point character-wise, if that makes sense. So actually another mom wrote in, and I sent you this question, but I'm going to read it just for the sake of people who are listening. She said, my daughter's 10, and every time she has a writing worksheet, she writes the shortest sentences possible, which I just told you I have the same issue. No details at all, and then she turns it in. It's not technically wrong, but how do I get her to put more detail and actually enjoy the writing process?
Yes, I love that question, because I think a lot of us have the way my 4. Now I have 4, so I had some with lots of words where you're like, okay, reel it in. And I had some with like 3 or 4 words and they were done, right? And so it's like, how do we do that, and how do we as parents help them with that? And so remember I talked about the skill of structure and style. So structure, what do you need to say? Like, let's plan what we want to say. Style, the beautiful thing about style is it teaches them how to move beyond those 3 or 4 or 5 word sentences, but in a fun, easy to understand way for the student. So for example, if your student has a sentence like, the girl danced across the stage, well, then IEW has these things called ly adverbs, and they'll say, okay, we need to add an ly adverb to the verb. Let's describe the verb. How did the girl dance across the stage? So they'll give them all these words that they can choose from so that they don't have to like think of a word that's not there, right? So they're building their vocabulary, and so you'll give them a menu, kind of like a menu of words, and they might like gracefully. And so we'll add that to the sentence. The girl gracefully danced across the stage. And then they'll have this stylistic technique called a who, which clause. And we'll say, well, let's describe the girl. Let's add a who, which clause about the girl and that ly adverb. So it might be the girl who was wearing yellow gracefully danced across the stage. So we can take that little, 3, 4, 6 word sentence, and then as they add these, what they call stylistic techniques, and they don't do it all at once. It's just like, okay, first couple of weeks, we're just adding ly adverbs. Next week, we're going to add a who, which clause. All right, week 7, we're going to add a strong verb. And so it builds incrementally so that our students are learning to add, complex sentences. We won't call it that, but they're learning to add complex sentences to their writing and learning how to paint pictures in a very systematic way. So when you have that situation, or the person who wrote in has that situation, IEW walks them through and us through how to support them in expanding their ability to write.
I love that you just said in a structured way, because I don't know the lady that wrote this question in, but I know for my daughter, part of it is she's a very logical thinker. So she is very creative when it comes to like art and doing things with her hands, but not so much when it comes to words. So I think the fact that you're teaching it, or they're teaching it in a structured way, maybe would help her brain understand it a little bit more as well. Because I'm a very logical thinker, so I get that, but I've never had to necessarily teach that side of it. So it's just something that's it's a little bit new to me to teach it, because it does come easy to me. So I've never had to like break down why I'm writing how I'm writing. I don't know. It just sounds good, and I know where things belong because I know a lot of grammar. So
right, and that's like it makes it. I call it like a mathy approach to writing a little bit, because for those of us who I'm a creative, but I'm also logical. So that was a little bit of the appeal for me. Like, I love that creative writing is there and it's embedded in the program, but the logical part of me liked the checklist that says every paragraph needs an ly adverb, and this is how you add one, and it's answering the question how. Every paragraph needs a because clause. So for our logical minded children, the way that it's presented is really helpful. For our creative children who have lots of words, well, that menu of words is just, exciting for them, because they are learning to.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. Right. That's true, right? I mean, to be honest with you, like, one thing I love about Classical Conversations is they always say, like, you're redeeming the education of 2 generations. And I always felt like that, because I'm learning alongside, or a lot of the times that I was homeschooling, I was learning alongside my students, my kids. So I always felt like I really wish this method was around when someone taught me how to write. Thank goodness I kind of naturally had that bend, but I feel like this would have been so much better. And if I would have had this kind of instruction when I was the age of the kids that I work with.
Give me one second. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, you put your laundry away. Yes. I know. I'm a solo parent during the week because of the way that my husband works. I'm pretty much here by myself. So I work from home full time, and we also homeschool. And she's real good about doing what she needs to do if mom happens to be on a Zoom or something. But without fail, that also means I need to ask you a question that I already know the answer to, because I want to see what you're doing. So that was exactly what just happened there.
Right.
She knew what she needed to do next, but had to tell me that she was done with one step and was going to move on to the other. So,
Mom life,
absolutely.
right?
That's something
Mom
I'm super
life.
passionate with homeschool moms is like, hey, you can do other things as well. Like, it's okay to be a little bit messy. It's okay to be on an interview and have your kid interrupt you. Like, we all understand that. We're all homeschoolers. This is our life. Like, it kind of centers around our kids. We just don't let it consume, our kids consume our lives, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then another question that was written in as far as writing goes is, what grade would you start teaching, or like, the question was, what grade would you start writing papers? I think it means what grade would you start doing like reports and stuff like that versus just fill in the blank questions maybe.
Yeah, so great question. Okay. And I would say it depends. It depends because, you know, as homeschooling moms, we know all of our children are different, right? And all of our children, they grow and progress at different levels. So this is where the free download that I have is really helpful, because it breaks, when we talk about writing, a lot of times we just say writing, but really this talks about the 13 skills that it takes for students to write well. And I'll just kind of go through them really quickly. But the reason why I have this is so that as parents, we can look at these skills and evaluate, like, okay, my child has some strengths in these areas, and in these other areas, these are places that maybe I can provide an accommodation for them. So like planning and outlining, we talked a little bit about that just with the keyword outline. Handwriting and typing, that's part of writing. That's a skill that they have to build. Because I always say that writing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not something that, you know, they'll do in a year and like, voila, we're done, check the box, let's move on. It's something that we are always, even now at our age, we're always developing. We have experiences that help us to develop what we want to say, and we have more to say depending on our lived experience. Summarizing is a skill that that our children have to learn to build. Reading, editing, speaking, executive function, that's another skill that is actually a writing skill, like keeping up with papers, breaking down the assignment into smaller parts so they know how to, you know, when to do what to be able to finish by Friday or whatever the day of the week is. Researching, grammar and punctuation, revising, spelling, vocabulary, but the most important skill is thinking. So to answer the question, but give a little bit of space for some grace in that answer, is I think really the first step is, where are my children as it relates to these skills, right? Where are they? So if they are struggling with handwriting or struggling with typing or speaking, like for example, I have a child of my own who struggled with expressive language delay. So rushing her too soon into writing before working, allowing her to build that skill of expressing herself, would have probably stressed her out. You know, so she didn't formally write on her own as soon as some of my other children formally wrote things down, in terms of like doing formal essays and things of that nature. So I would say, if you're a parent listening, like really pick up these 13 skills. Think through, where are the strengths? Where are there some areas where my student needs to kind of continue to develop? Think of ways to build accommodations around those. And then when you feel like they are ready to formally write, then you can have them formally write. But what that means is, like with IEW, their philosophy is you can never help your child too much. So formally writing, we really want them to think. So if formally writing means that when my child handwrites, like there's tears and you know, all the things, well, you can let them dictate to you, and you write their ideas. That counts. That still counts as writing until they build those muscles to formally handwrite it themselves. Or for students who maybe struggle with typing, they can think, they have the ideas, You can use things like voice to text, or what is it? Voice typing with Google.
I don't know what they're called,
Word
but I
has
know what
something
you're
else. I
talking
forgot
about.
what it's called.
Because they always mess up my words.
Yeah, those kinds of always work well. You know, sometimes they don't hear you right. But these are fun ways that we can provide accommodations around our students so that they can think. The other thing I say is that you're probably already doing some writing. Like, think about writing in pieces: words, sentences, paragraphs, essays. So you can start with, okay, well, let's play with words. Let's just play with, all right, today we are banning the word bad. So if something is bad, here's a menu of 10 words that we can use instead. And maybe you can even like throw in something that you're going to cook that is going to taste bad. So you have to ban that word and have fun playing around with those words. So I would say formal writing, generally, like when I start teaching it, 3rd through 5th grade is when they first start that SSS 1A program, which is IEW's like first level. But that doesn't always mean they're doing everything by themselves. It means that the parent is coming alongside them to provide some of these accommodations, maybe handwriting, maybe typing for them. Then in that kind of 6th through 8th grade range, I see them becoming a little bit more independent. So taking on some more of that handwriting or typing, because they're, you know, with that extra help, you are able to assess, and they are also able to assess, hey, I've gotten really good at summarizing. I don't think I need your help as much, mom or dad, anymore. Or, you know what, I think I can type myself. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. I would say start with evaluating where your child is. Figure out if there's some supports around some of these skill sets. Obviously, thinking is the most important skill set. And then figure out when it makes the most sense to slowly but surely give them some of these skills on their own that they can do as they show that they are improving and developing. Because the goal is to not make it
Yeah.
I love to make writing fun, because it can be fun, versus like a lot of times people think about writing, it's just like, oh, writing is so stressful. And I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be. We can do so many things to make it engaging and fun for our kids.
Glad that you clarified, because when I think of writing, I think the kid's going to sit down with a paper and write. You're saying it's more of, not more of, but it's also getting their thoughts out. It's not necessarily that they have to write it down, especially if they're not ready for that yet, or if they're having a bad day or whatever. So I like that you clarified that, because some days that's how I feel it is with my daughter. Like, the thoughts are coming. She just doesn't want to write because we've been doing a lot of writing that day already in other subjects. And then other days, you know, certain subjects have heavier writing days on certain days and not on others. So I try to line it up to where if I know we're having a heavy writing day in a few subjects, I don't throw writing on top of that day as well. I try to put that on the days where our baby science has an experiment instead of like a questionnaire or whatever. So I like that you said that, because it helps me, and I'm sure other listeners, incorporate writing on days that we maybe aren't going to make our kid actually sit down and like physically write out the words. So I like that a lot. I didn't ask you this because we had a couple questions come in after. So if you don't know the answer, or you just don't have a suggestion, you can definitely say pass. But I have a lot of game schoolers in my community. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Do you have any games that you would suggest that help encourage writing? Or language arts, probably either one.
Oh, man. Oh, there's so many. There's so many things. Well, I'm kind of a stick in the sand kind of person. So there's a lot, and I like that you make things simple for the people who are watching you and following you, because I think it doesn't have to be elaborate. Like, there's literally a gazillion games. So if you like tech kind of games, I love Kahoot. Actually, every Friday I give out a free Kahoot game for it's called Kahoot.
Kahoot.
K-A-H-O-O-T.
I thought you were saying Kahoot something. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to write it down. Kahoot. Okay. I'll have to look at that.
Kahoot. I think they have a free version still, but even the paid version is super, super cheap. and you can put in some of the things that you are teaching your student, and you can do it across subjects. So it could be ELA, all kinds of different things. I love, again, if you're a techie person, I love, and my kids love, JeopardyLabs.com. It actually works like Jeopardy. So that is really a fun kind of technology way that you can practice ELA or the different skill sets that you're learning, whether it's vocabulary or grammar, or homophones. That's a big thing when we're teaching our kids how to write. So those are the techie things. Some of the, okay. All right, now you're like in my,
Good.
this is,
We do
I love
too.
games.
We have a whole,
okay,
we're
so
about to purge a bunch of ours and get some new ones. So I'm glad you're giving some ideas.
I love games. Yeah, so I play, if you like Battleship, so I play Battleship. And for example, if you're teaching your child vocabulary, I feel like I want to show you now because I'm a visual learner. So I take Battleship and I make it like it's 36 numbers on my board. You can just write it on a whiteboard. You can just get a piece of paper and write 1 through 36. And you hide, your ship. You just know where your ships are. And then they pick a number, and that number corresponds to a question, like maybe a vocabulary that you're focusing on, or maybe it's a grammar rule or whatever you're teaching them. And then if they answer the question correctly, that launches their missile. And if they hit you, you can say, oh, you hit me. So the whole goal is like you're reviewing, they're trying to sink you, but we're reviewing in a way that's
like
fun.
That.
It's so simple and it's so fun, and you just use a board of 1 through 36, and you can change up your questions for whatever. You can do it for history, you can do it for math, you can do it for whatever you're learning, because I like to repurpose games because, we don't have all day to make a new thing for all the things. We just, need to make sure that we can repurpose. Another one my kids love, well, when I was teaching live, like in person, it's called Slap Vocabulary. So I love a whiteboard. So if you put like, say, all the vocabulary words you're trying to learn, you kind of need 3 people. And they do like to play against like mom. And so the person can yell out the definition, and then you get these little fly swatters. Obviously not ones you use for real.
That has fly swatters in it. So that would be perfect. Repurpose right there.
So you can just repurpose, write vocabulary words all over. Or you can write the name of books. So maybe you've written books and like you read a line from a book, and you're like, which book is it? And you try to, whoever slaps it first, you get to eat, I don't know, you get to eat a Hershey's Kiss or whatever you like to eat. Like, you can make it real fun. Another game that I absolutely love. There's obviously the, I call it Don't Fall in the Hole. It's kind of like Hangman, or three strikes you're out. So you can put, something on the board and ask them to pick letters. I usually pick something that's a concept that we're learning. Like, I might put something like topic and clincher sentence on the board, and the hint is something that all paragraphs need. And then, of course, they have to pick letters and figure out if the letters on the board. And then once they solve it, I'll say, okay, now tell me, what is a topic and clincher sentence? It's basically like a, topic and a conclusion sentence on a paragraph. So for the games, I think games are probably one of the best ways of teaching our kids, and best ways for us to teach, because it's fun for us, right? It's fun, we laugh, we joke, but we still learn, and it's this experience that, like, if you can do games and like mix food in there, I'm all about like the games and the food.
We do themed days. Like, for example, St. Patrick's Day, we typically do a St. Patrick's School Day. So all the lessons are relatively fun and centered around it. And then the entire day, we eat pretty much nothing but green food. And my daughter thinks it's just like the most awesome thing ever. So I love doing like little fun things like that. My mom's actually coming down for 2 weeks in May. And because we do year-round homeschooling, it'll technically still be like school for my daughter. But we're going to take those 2 weeks off and basically just do game schooling the entire time, because my mom loves playing games. So my daughter's still going to be in school, but it's not going to look the same that it normally does. So we're excited about that.
Mad Libs, I forgot about that. That's like an easy Mad Libs. Mad Libs is a great game for practicing part to speech.
And there are kid-friendly Mad Libs that have the, like, nouns for you to pick from if your kid doesn't quite have like that grasp of it yet for anyone that's listening, because that's what I started my daughter with a Christmas Mad Libs that her grandparents actually gave her. She was, I think, kindergarten or first grade, and it was like, okay, put a noun, but like this page has all the nouns, so you don't have to think really. You just like are learning as you're going. She thought it was the coolest thing ever, and it gave her reading practice afterwards also. So
exactly,
there are tons and tons of games out there. And you don't have to feel obligated to do this, but if you have time and want to do something like this later, let me know, Alicia, and we can collab on if you want to put a blog post together just of games that promote language arts and writing. And I will gladly not only put it on my blog as well with all your links and everything on it, but I will push it out to my email list, because I have a huge community of game schoolers. I know that's something that they all like. So that would be something that could stay on my blog forever, because I routinely will put like different game ideas and stuff on there. So if that is ever something you have time for, let me know.
I'll put that together, because actually I love games. That's probably like one of the most exciting parts of teaching is being able to like gamify stuff. So fun, and the kids are like, you know, learning things. They can even learn concepts that are pretty in depth and difficult, but if we put it in a game, they're like, yes, let's do this.
I had a math teacher when I was in public school that 7th grade, I think. And he had this weird, it was called like Zip Zap or something. I don't remember how it went, but it was teaching multiplication and like how to like rattle it off really, really fast and multiples of 5. And we'd go around the classroom and play that sucker. And it didn't even feel like we were in school. It was so fun. Yet those are some of the lessons that I remember and some of the skills that I have mastered far outweighing the other ones. So I'm 100% for making learning fun. And that's part of like getting your kids to actually enjoy doing it. You kind of already answered this if you have anything extra that you want to add to it, but if you have a parent that comes to you that is not well-versed in English, maybe either it's not their first language or they just didn't have great schooling, so there's gaps in that, or maybe they just, I don't know, whatever other reason that it's just not great for them, what would you suggest for them starting out to be able to become a stronger writer themselves as they're also teaching their kids?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to speak specifically to what the Institute for Excellence in Writing has available for parents. I would say, well, for all parents, they have what's called Teaching Writing Structure and Style. I actually have it right here beside me. And this is it's a workbook that they give, that they don't give, let me not say.
They're going to be like,
no,
they sell. We did not tell you to tell your audience that this was free.
They're like, and that is a correction, please. Yes, they sell this, and they have a teacher training video that goes along, teacher parent training video that goes along with this, where it teaches all of their structure and style strategies, so that when you as a parent are wanting to teach your child, you've already gone through the training. Now, the second thing that I would suggest for someone who is, maybe they just aren't really, like you said, confident in their own writing skills, or whatever the hesitation is, I would start with the video-based lessons. The video-based lesson is Andrew Pudewa, modeling the process of writing the keyword outline. It's taught to the student, but you can watch it as the parent alongside your student, so that you are learning as well. The other thing, so there's that, but then some parents want a little bit more support. And so that's kind of where like a class like mine would come in, because not only are you doing that at home using that video-based support and video-based lesson, I then come in and provide feedback and guidance and support on the actual paper. So the students turn their papers into me, and I can make sure that as the student is writing their paper, they're getting feedback. So if the parent doesn't feel as comfortable giving feedback, or I have some parents who, as our students get a little bit older, like when my students got to that teen stage, and it was,
I work with teenagers on a regular basis. I get it.
They didn't want my mom grade. Right. So it gives them, you know, that support as well. So I would say I like to start with the video-based support for those parents, because you don't necessarily have to have another tutor like me, it just gives both parent and student support along the way. Because I know the issue for me, and the issue for a lot of homeschooling families is just like, we have so many things that are going on that sometimes writing gets put on that back burner. So part of the reason why I joined CC, Classical Conversations, is because I liked that weekly community. I liked that it helped me kind of stay on top of keeping writing and whatever else we were doing at the forefront of our homeschooling. So I would say video support, join a class. My classes have parent support too. So I do parent huddles every month. So if a parent says, hey, I need support, they have the support of all the parents who are both new and veteran. So I don't have, I have a lot of answers, but a lot of the answers are in the community of parents. So you don't have to do it by yourself. And then your student every week has their team of writers to keep them motivated and encouraged as well. So I just think that community support, the video-based lessons, until you're really comfortable either with the process of IAW to do it on your own, is super helpful for any of those parents in those situations.
The last couple questions I have are not writing specific. They're very much homeschool in general. I did not ask you about your time frame tonight, and I apologize. I usually do that. Would you like a few more questions, or I don't know what you have going on tonight as far as what time schedule you're on?
Yeah, I'm good. I have to pick up my son from lacrosse practice at 8:30. So
my daughter is supposed to be putting laundry away, and she's come out a couple times to like try to ask a question. I'm like, no, you don't need anything. So I don't really know what she's doing, but hopefully she's staying out of trouble. Like the toddler age, they always say if it's quiet, there's something bad going on. Thankfully, we're not in that stage anymore. Oh, here we go. Did you have something you need?
Right.
Well, I'm done. You forgot that you're done.
I was supposed to say I was done, and then I didn't.
Okay, remember, you don't need to tell me that you're done. What are you supposed to do when you're done cleaning? Okay. If she was not only half dressed right now, she'd be on this camera waving at y'all, but she's not allowed to be because she's wearing like booty shorts and a tank top. And we try to be a little bit modest when we're like for the internet for the whole world to see. But otherwise, she'd be right up in here like, oh, what you doing, Mom? I'm like, who's that lady? Because that is 100% my child's personality. What did you say? I'm sorry.
I love it. She would say, I have a question for you, Mrs.
Mom,
Brown.
not to make me write this much. That'd be her. No, I actually make writing prompts. So I specifically get her started because for her, the biggest thing is just getting her started. Once she has a prompt, and then we'll sit and do it together. So she'll write a sentence, and they're like, okay, I'm done. I was like, okay, well, after the leprechaun reached the end of the rainbow, because right now they're all like St. Patrick's Day, he found, and then like kind of help her expand on it a little bit. And then she gets into it. But it's like that getting, I don't know, the getting started part, or the starting on the next part of the story, that I don't know if it's like, okay, I'm done, I don't want to do it, or like I really can't think of anything. So I'm like, that's okay, I'll help you. I'll give you another prompt. So we're working on it. I figure at this age, we just work on it. So what are some lessons that you've learned over homeschooling that influence how you support parents and engage students now as a teacher? That's probably a loaded question.
Man. Oh gosh. Woo! It's such a good question. I was actually giggling to myself earlier because I was straight like anxious when I first started. I was the crazy woman. It was like the first year I joined like 2 co-ops and an online like school, like, as you know, that's just crazy. It was too much, and I bought way too many things.
The stories the Amazon drivers can tell you. And my husband's bank account.
Right. So I guess I would say in hindsight, the funniest thing is the year, our most memorable year homeschooling was when we did no co-ops, we did no classical conversations. I said, all right, you have to do math, you have to write something, and then I don't care what you do for the second half of the day. You have to do something really interested in. You can go like all the way in and read a book. You can do whatever you want. That is the year that my kids talk about all the time. Yeah. When it was simple. So I would say one of the biggest lessons I learned is that you can really get a lot done with simplifying as much as possible. And like combining, there's so many ways that you can combine different subject matters, even just for yourself, because again, we have so many hats that we wear, right? We're mom, some of us are spouses, some of us run our own businesses, or whatever it is that we're doing. We're sisters, we're, daughters, we're all the things. And so simplifying things. I think the other thing too is just reminding my parents and reminding myself that it is a marathon, like it is a journey. And so, my kids and I laugh often about, these moments I would have where I'm like, oh my gosh, you can't spell, you're going to be 40 years old in my basement, never having kind of right? And I'm like, okay, I was so, I worried too much about the product. And so I would say the process over the product is really important. I really try to emphasize that, like, hey, it's okay if the writing doesn't sound that great today. Not every, who knows what's going on that day. And we don't even bring our A game.
But so many of us expect our kids to be 100% every single day when we are not even 100% every single day. Like, it's not fair at all to them.
Yeah. And, and I'm saying this not because I got it right. So I'm saying this because a lot of the times I got it wrong. I, overwhelmed my kids, or I pushed them too hard, or we did too much. I mean, one day they were like, Mom, can we just stay home? And I'm like, well, we're homeschooled. And they're like, can we just stay home? Because I was doing too much, just too much. So I would just say, to keep it simple, simplify and celebrate the process. And that even means like yourself, like celebrate that maybe you didn't get all the things done on your list, but you showed up, right? You did the best that you could with the time that you had, with the information that you had. And so I had to really learn how to accept the day that was in front of me, not exactly the day that I always planned. And usually I was accepting the day in front of me, not what I planned, because we are educating humans. And so, and it was okay. And like, if I had to not get math done that day because my crying child needed grace and a moment for us to just figure out why he was upset about something, that was more important. That was actually what was needed that day, not long division, right? It's about the relationship. And somebody else told me about the relationship piece. I talked to a mom who, her kids were adults, and she was like, the relationship is the most important thing. Math will come, writing will come, science and history and all the things will come. But the relationship is really what you want to do. I was literally
going to chime in and say that when you're finished. Because what I'm hearing you say is there's seasons of homeschooling. And not every season looks the same.
There's seasons.
But you always go back to the relationship with your child. Like, that is a primary focus for homeschoolers, even if we don't realize that's one of the advantages we have. Because our kids are with us all the time. Like, we do get to build that lasting trust and that lasting communication versus having them go somewhere for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, depending on extracurriculars and that kind of stuff, and then come home and then try to cram all of that in the evenings. Did you guys do year-round schooling, or did you do 9 months or Sabbath, or what did you guys do?
Yeah, we kind of did. I first started, when I first started, it was very much like public school, because that is what I knew. And then the more I relaxed into it doesn't have to look like that, we kind of did year-round schooling. So it was a lot more relaxed in the summer months, just because we could be outside. I live in Ohio, so like anytime it's not snowing and it feels great, we want to be outside. So we always did math, and we always did some kind of reading. So we always did that in the summer. And then in the general school year, like the Septembers through the Aprils or May, that's when we added more. So generally we follow the classical conversation curriculum early on, where again we met September through April, May, and then we still schooled in the summer, but we just made
Well,
it
I
very
think
relaxed.
in general, homeschooling year round, for me at least, because I have a Bachelor of Science in Education. So I came to the homeschool table with a lot of preconceived notions on how it was supposed to be done. And I think just in general, being able to homeschool year round has made it a lot more relaxed, because I'm trying to cram 9 months of work into 12 months versus 9 months into 9 months, and heaven forbid a family tragedy happens, or we want to take a vacation, or our family gets, right now, like, no, not right now, but like the season, like COVID is still rampant in certain places. So then it kind of throws it off, and you're like feeling like you're trying to play catch up, and then you're rushed, your kids are rushed. Which is my last question on here, and then we'll wrap it up, is you talk a lot about teaching from rest. Can you let our listeners know what that means? Because for high-strung A-type personalities like myself, when I was new to homeschooling, I would look at that and be like, ooh, she lazy. No, girl, no. And I know that's not what it means now. So how would you explain that?
Yes. I have to say, I need to probably go grab the book and show you. There's a book. I read it every year because I have to, like, you know, put the high-strung Alicia on the side. Sometimes I have my 16-year-old look at me like, she's high-strung.
My daughter will tell you that.
I'm still
have to like remind myself to not be that person all the time.
Oh, it's so difficult, but the teaching from rest, really, that book, it's written, why is the name forgetting me? The lady who does the Read Aloud Revival.
I feel like I know what you're talking about.
Remember her name right now, but she's like,
one that's on my rotation for Audible.
Yeah, it's an excellent book. What I had to remember, that she talks about is just, really allowing ourselves and our kids the grace to be human, right? The grace to be human, and not putting so much pressure on ourselves and putting that pressure on our children. And again, giving ourselves the grace, like I talked about, like, hey, I have a plan. It's not like we're not going to plan. That's a prudent thing to do. But it's okay to say, it looks like this is what is needed right now. I would also say making sure that you, and I think you talked about this a little bit earlier, that you recharge for yourself. It is, you know, homeschooling is wonderful, but it is truly, it's a labor of love. And we give a lot of ourselves. And I think it's really important to pay attention to what you need. And I think a lot of time, again, I'm saying this because I did it wrong a lot. I think I did not honor my needs, and I became everything that everybody else needed, and pretzeled myself so much
by all of that.
I was consumed by all of it, instead of creating small spaces for Alicia, like not mom Alicia, not wife Alicia, not all the things that I am to everybody else, but me, you know, that I loved. And so I think just teaching from rest is honoring yourself, honoring what you need, honoring your kids as human, doing the best that you can, and then knowing that you don't have control over outcomes, right? That's so hard. I actually hate that because I want to control the outcome. Like, I want to be like, hey, I've written your life out. Exactly how it's going to go. But I have teenagers. I got an 18-year-old now, so I'm really in that I do not control outcome space. And knowing that it's okay that I show up, I do what I can do in my human body, and then for me, I identify as Christian. I just let God do the rest. Yep. Like, I do the best that I hate
the statement, I am enough. I think it is not used properly. I love the statement, I am enough in Christ, or Christ is enough, however you want to word it. But I feel like in our homeschools, we absolutely are enough if we partner with him and, like, he makes us enough.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So I really was, my high strungness came from wanting to control an outcome. When I really look back at, like, when I was out of control, high strung, like, it must be like this. And when we do the piano recital, we must practice so it is perfect, and like all the things. I was like all I was all the things. Now I'm just like, okay, I guess we're going to work with good enough today. That's no problem. There's always tomorrow. And that's okay. And that's okay. There's always tomorrow. And so I think that I had to learn that it wasn't about me trying to control the outcome. It was about me showing up, doing the best that I could. Like you said, partnering with the Lord, letting him do the rest, and realizing he loves my kids way more than I do. And so
for me, it was a little bit of controlling the outcome. It was probably bigger, feeling like I needed to prove to friends and family who were not homeschooling that we were doing it just as good, if not better, than what their kids were getting in school. And it took me a little while to realize, like, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I need to make sure that I am showing up how God wants me to show up, and that I'm obviously following biblical principles. I'm not teaching my child to be lazy, and we're just like not ever doing school because we don't want to. Like, we show up and we're consistent, and we try to work with time management, but there's a lot of grace that goes into it as well. And it definitely is. Now it means a lot more that I know in my heart that I'm doing what God wants me to do in our homeschool versus what Susie down the street thinks I should be doing because her kid is 5 and already playing, you know, at a 12th grade level on piano or whatever it is.
Right, because the pressure, the comparison is real, and you know those Thanksgiving dinners when the family's like trying to like quiz your kid to see if you're teaching them. So like there's that outside pressure, and yes, it took a long time, but I finally got to the point where I was like, yeah, I don't have anything.
When someone's like, oh, what's 12 times 3? I'm like, well, she's 4, so nothing yet. Stop asking my kid questions. Like, go ask her what her favorite color is, or ask her what she learned today and what she got her happy today. Stop trying to quiz her on stuff you probably don't even know off the top of your head. I had this conversation with a homeschool mom this weekend, actually. She's like, you know, someone asked me what the, 22nd president was. She's like, I wouldn't know without, like, singing a song in my head either. She's like, and I'm 35. I was like, yeah, I have a huge gap in my education. So there are times when someone will ask me a question, or ask my daughter a question rather, and like I don't know the answer. So I have to ask my husband, like, hey, because he is really good in a lot of subjects. Like, hey, if you got asked this question, do you know it off your head? And most of the time it's a no. So I know if he doesn't know it, then it really is not something she needs to be able to rattle off to some random stranger. So it's very funny when that happens. I'm like, listen, most moms can't rattle out information off either. So
I tell my grammar kids when we're doing Fix It Grammar, I was like, I promise you, I was like, don't do this, but like if you give this grammar page to like a stranger, an adult on the street, they won't be able to do what we're doing. So don't even have the expectation that you'll get all these. This about practice. It's about practice. It's a process. We showed up.
I took upper level grammar classes in college to get my degree. Can I tell you how much stuff I'm going to have to relearn when my daughter goes through it? Now I'm sure it'll come quicker because like at one time I knew it. But I couldn't rattle off a lot of the stuff that even you said. I was like, wait, what was that again? Like, it's been over a decade. I haven't used it really. So, yeah, it's not fair to expect stuff like that when we ourselves can't rattle off certain information, even that we knew at one point. So, 100%. Give the paper to your mom, and she's probably not going to be able to do it without looking up some directions. Because not her job. Like that's not something that she is actively specializing in. So of course she's not going to know as much as the teacher does or whoever wrote the curriculum. That's their job in that moment. So yeah, that's awesome. So for everyone that's listening, I know you are giving them that writing skills checklist that you talked about. They can go to writewithmrsbrown.com and get it there. Or like I said, I have it. I'm going to put it right in my stories as soon as we're done here. So you can literally click the link. Get it super, super easy. And then I'm also going to include it in my freebie tab in my highlights because I have all my freebies up there. So that way, if you're watching this interview and it's days later, or maybe you're watching it on YouTube, because I'm going to repurpose it on YouTube as well, then you can just go to the highlight tabs at Helping Hearts Homeschool and you can download it with a click of a button. So it's super easy to get that from her. And then other than that, so where can my audience find you? I know they have your Instagram because you're on here. Do you have a YouTube? Do you have certain things on your website you can point them to? Courses that you're selling? Anything that you would like to shamelessly plug because we're talking about your stuff on purpose?
Got you. Yeah, so I would say the easiest way to find me is Instagram. On YouTube, I have lots of different grammar and writing songs to help your students memorize like prepositions, stuff like that. So YouTube, go check out YouTube if you're like, oh, okay, I need a preposition song. I need a helping verb song. So I write songs for my students to help them memorize all of those grammar concepts that we're trying to memorize. And then on my website, that's where you'll find my classes, writewithmrsbrown.com. As soon as you come to my website, you'll have an opportunity to join the newsletter. And if you join the newsletter, you get access to this whole list of free things. Obviously, what I'm giving away for free is there. It also will come with a podcast episode that will walk you through being able to kind of fill out this form and understand how to use it. So it's a great podcast if you have a chance to kind of do that. So I would say those are the three main places: Instagram, YouTube, and my website, Write with Mrs. Brown. And so in the summer, I'm going to be coming out with these writing sprints, because right now I teach full year classes, but sometimes we just want to, have a 4, 5, 6 lesson class that just teaches us how to, like we were talking about earlier, how do I write better sentences? How do I expand a sentence? We just need a nice hit it and quit it kind of lesson. So visit Write with Mrs. Brown over the summer and be looking for those sprints.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely link all of your stuff in my stories and my highlights and that kind of stuff. And then if you get that game list put together, I will gladly share it out. This was fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like this went we played off each other really well, so that was good.
Yes, I enjoyed this as well. I look forward to, hosting you on my site and helping you help my families that I support too with what you offer. So this was great.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Well, I will talk to you later, and I'll definitely be getting on your website and especially looking at those songs, because my daughter learns a lot of stuff from songs. So I'm really glad that I asked you that question, because that wasn't something that came up, and that instantly was like, oh yes, I need those.
Yes, in my former growing up life, I wanted to be Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. That didn't quite work out. So I was like, well, you know what? I can write grammar songs.
Hey,
I'm just saying, I can still do that.
I spent tens of thousands of dollars on a teaching degree, and I teach my one child at home. So you know what? God gives us our dreams and stuff for a reason, and we use them how he wants us to use them. So it works.
Sounds good. Well, you have a wonderful evening.
Absolutely.
And we'll be in touch soon.
Bye.
Take care.